Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am joined today by two very special friends and just freaking powerful light warriors in the world, Patricia, Cori, and Magenta, Pixie. And I just want to first thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fun to create these things with you guys.
Indeed. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I just want you both to just share a few words about yourselves and just, what kind of work you do and what sort of, I guess, titles or word associations with the kind of work you do. And good, just take turns.
Go ahead, Magenta.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for arranging this. That's amazing. Thank you. Lovely to be with you both again. So my name is Magenta Pixie. Obviously, that's not my real name. It was originally a YouTube username, but it ended up being my magical name. And I have been communicating with a higher self aspect or a group of light beings or a futuristic aspect of myself, or whichever way you want to refer to them, since 1993 in various guises. And I started to release their messages on YouTube in video form in 2008, and I've been bringing forward their messages to humanity ever since in whatever way I can.
Awesome. And Patricia?
Okay, well, similarly, I am an emissary for the Syrian High Council. These beings started appearing to me when I was a little girl as a sort of almost fairy-like beings that were, I used to call them the little blue people, and communicating galactic information to me at a time when we were just not hearing this kind of information with children. Back, I hate to date myself, we're talking the 50s. And it's carried on. I had a wonderful mother who kept me open, so I didn't have to close down and relearn, remember all the faculty of seeing and who I was. So I've been working with these beings really openly and with the public since 1997, when I went into a major crop circle and had a life-altering experience and got a tune-up and started receiving just these downloads of book after book after book known as the Syrian Revelations. And 14 books later, and more on the way, I'm just in service. I'm a light warrior. I like to always use that word because we need them now. And I'm in service to the task ahead, which is light over darkness.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I just find it just wonderful timing that we're all meeting after getting the news this morning. I know it's morning over here and it's different times where you guys are, but yeah, the arrest of Ghislaine Max.Well, that's huge. So maybe, yeah, just bringing some thoughts to that. I know we were talking a little bit before we started the show about it, and yeah, just if you guys just want to share where you feel like this is all going and what it kind of lit up in you and maybe what started to come through with this like really groundbreaking news.
Well, I'd just like to put in a 2 cents here, and that is that, as I was saying to you, Laura, we heard from Trump just a few days ago that when he said, I can't remember his precise words, but he said, okay, looking forward to the next few weeks, we're really going to do, it's time, we're going to really drain this swamp. And so be looking for a lot of announcements. We got big announcements. We got announcements coming. So I was on red alert because, when he gives those clues, we listen. And I'm certainly confident that one of the big ones was the arrest of Ghislaine, who was the madam and procurer. And for people who don't know, if anybody doesn't know, she was Epstein's so-called girlfriend, the madam, the procurer of these children. And her arrest is very, very, very exciting in the draining of the swamp. So I'm elated. And yeah, I think it's great that this happened today when we were getting ready to be together to talk about that.
Yeah, I agree with Patricia. I think we've got some really high energy dates coming up. We're now sort of in the very early stages of July. We've got this 4th of July, which is your Independence Day, which the 9 have said will be the first year that this is a World Independence Day rather than just an American Independence Day. As for those who are awake and who are aware of the truth, we will be moving into that energy of independence and freedom and liberty, planting the seeds for that. And then the next day we have a lunar eclipse. And then the 7th of July, many are talking about that being a high energy day. I haven't necessarily been told that, but I've been told that all the dates that we think of when there's been something like a flag of the false kind or a negative event occurring on that day, we're now healing that. And obviously we had that occur on the 7th of the 7th in London several years ago. So this is being healed. So it's like everything is coming out, everything is being revealed. I don't see one great big reveal, but I think the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell is part of this. These revelations that are going to occur faster and faster, I think it's the start of the unraveling. And what I feel is, at the moment, what the cabal are trying to do is give away as little as possible to the public, but as much as they can, so that they can sort of give away a story, yet hold back. I'm feeling this energy is being held back, and I'm not seeing that working, because I'm seeing even just the slightest little bit that is given away, everything else will become unraveled, and things that they want to keep hidden won't be hidden, because this is 2020, this is the year of 2020 vision, revelation. So yes, very exciting. I saw it on, I think it was yours, Patricia. I saw it on your Facebook, and I saw it at first and I thought, I won't celebrate just yet. I'll wait to see if I hear any more. If this hits absolute mainstream, then I know that it's a story that's, truthful. Not sure how much truth we are actually getting at the moment, though. Like I said, something is being held back, but I feel that will unravel. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's the first of many revelations yet to come throughout the next few weeks, the summer, and everything is tied up with the whole situation we're in now, with the pathogenic situation and lockdown and everything else. I think it's all tied up, because we all know it's all been orchestrated by the same groups, the same people. So a huge truth reveal coming the rest of this year.
Yeah, and the timing's really great. We have another eclipse coming up this weekend, the 3rd eclipse. Yeah. Which really sets the energy for quite a lot of months, like 6 months or so. So it's good to have this in the eclipse window, to have this next cycle of energy connected to eclipses be like in that arena of attention being on this, right, instead of all this other engineered stuff. I mean, yes, even though things will be held back, it seems like it's going to be hard to continue the steered false narrative in the news with so much attention on that, because that was like sort of like lost and forgotten. So you guys understand like a lot about the strategies that the cabal has and the pandemic and how these things have been in the works for a while. So maybe we could talk about the strategies and how they can't really deal with the spontaneity or the mass awakening. I don't think they were prepared for this. What are your thoughts about just where we are compared with what maybe they expected, or just anything like connected to those kind of themes? What are you guys' thoughts?
I think they've always underestimated the power and the will of the human spirit. And so, it seems to me so clear that they keep trying a new thing and it works to a certain point, and then there's the pullback, and then it's like, okay, let's do this. And, every attempt for them to come up with a new game plan awakens us more. So they're shooting themselves in their own Achilles heel, if you will. But I think that the plan isn't working, and they know it, and they're desperate. The desperation is palpable. And, with the arrest of each of these individuals, they're getting more and more frantic. And so I'm kind of enjoying it. I mean, I have this smile on my face because this just happened. And but I am enjoying watching through the haze of all the pandemic and all of the racial issues and whatever. We see them slipping more and more and more. And, I just feel that the teams that are pushing through are unstoppable. And when I'm talking about Trump and his teams. And there's something else we've got to talk about, which is you know, for the QAnon people, we do have this July 4th event coming up, and the possibility, or at least the rumor, that JJ is going to appear at Mount Rushmore, where Trump is going to be. And, you know, I realize that it's just a supposition and a rumor and whatever you want to call it, but it's kind of interesting that he had Mount Rushmore on the cover of his last issue of George. I'm talking about JJ. And was talking about looking to the future, 2020, Mount Rushmore in the background. And, you know, it's very interesting that Trump is going to be there on July 4th. So I think we've got some pretty interesting dynamics underway, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to get some phenomenally good news.
Yeah, I agree with you, Patricia, everything you said.
Right.
And I do agree that the cabal have underestimated the people. They've underestimated the American people. They've underestimated humanity. And I think many of them, they would have heard about this Great Awakening, but I think they believed that their ability to steer it and prevent it would prevail, because they have to find a way to shut people down. But because they were behind schedule, really, I mean, their plan was late. All these things were meant to happen prior to this year. I mean, energetically, it's all divinely according to the divine plan. But from their point of view, they wanted these things out. They wanted, you know, microchips and et cetera, out already. And so that would have been part of shutting people down and preventing a Great Awakening. Exactly. But I think they were banking on fear. They were banking on people being afraid. And yes, there was fear, but they've underestimated the human spirit and how people can come together and move beyond that fear. And what I have seen is phenomenal when it comes to the Great Awakening. Just in my little town, you know, where I live, people who I never would have thought would have had any awareness that their interests were going to work, going out, you know, out with the girls in the evening, or the lads or whatever, and having a drink and watching the football, that their thoughts simply were not beyond that. And now their focus is none of those things. Everything has become so different. I mean, I know people who, all they were thinking about is the next event. Friday night we're going out, and 2 weeks time we're going on holiday. In 1 month time there's a wedding. And now it's the next book. Which is the next book they can read? Which is the next documentary they can watch? Which is the next bit of social media information they can find? Everyone is expanding and opening up. Even those who are caught in the false narrative, they're still waking up to something. So even if it's just annoyance and frustration, everyone is seeing that the real truth in front of their eyes. Now, whether they dismiss it or call it a conspiracy theory, but it's coming to them.
Well, there's a sort of there's an existential crisis going on, and people with their masks and with the rioting and whatever, you'd have to be pretty completely numb. Completely. I mean, it's one thing to be going out with the lads and having a brewski, and it's another to be completely mind dead, where you see this outer world happening around you. This is an existential crisis for the human race, and you know, you can decide not to participate in the Great Awakening to a certain point, but when you see the world completely stopped around you, you cannot help but start to ask yourself, what is going on here? And with the question comes the alternative to buy into the fear or start to look to the spiritual answers, or at least investigations of it. Whereas before, it wasn't bad enough to do that. It was just like, you know, life as usual, hey, whatever. And now it's like existential crisis time. Where are we going as human beings on this planet? Yeah. So, you know, whatever they've created, this is why I've got the smile, because the more they create to stop it, the more they activate us. And, you know, the Syrian High Council say, the tighter they squeeze you, the freer you become.
Yeah, the more they try to prevent the Great Awakening, the more they trigger and create and catalyze the Great Awakening. But one thing I don't think that they expected was for people to be able to find joy and happiness. And I'm not just talking about the spiritually aware people, because they know how to move into joy, even in very challenging situations. I mean, the average person who hasn't woken up spiritually. I watch a daytime television program here in the UK, and all of a sudden, in the last few weeks, this one woman has appeared on this daytime show. She wasn't in it much before, but she's now there all the time. And I've noticed that every time the narrative moves away from a cabal NWO narrative, she sharply brings it back. Her energy is typically cabal, service to self, and I could see this straight away. And I noticed the other day they had some guests on in the Skype setup. They're not actually in the studio, talking about the positives of lockdown and how lockdown has changed their lives in a positive way. Just simple things like they've thought about their family more, or they've spent more time in their garden, or just talking about what has been positive about lockdown. And I could see that she was getting more and more sort of tight emotionally inside, like she was sort of seething. And this is the whole cabal thing. They don't want us to be happy and enjoying a challenging situation. They don't want us to be out in the garden buying lazy spas and chilling out with our new plants or whatever it is that we have done. They don't want that. And do you know what? She looked at the camera and she said, right to the camera, "It's not over yet. Stay safe." Now, a person who's not awake would think, oh, okay, she's letting us know it's not over yet and telling us to stay safe. But that's nice. But it was said like a warning. Those who were awake, it was a warning. It's not over yet. Stay safe. Like letting us know we're not going to have you being happy like this. So in answer to Laura's question, we were underestimated, because happiness and joy and togetherness and compassion and unity creates the Great Awakening, and it creates the Ascension timeline, and it creates more truth and more justice and more revealing, everything that's been prophesied. And as you say, they're trying so hard, and every step they take to prevent, to squeeze, as the Syrian High Council said, the more they squeeze, every step they take to do that, it's rebounding. I mean, the Nine told me 2 or 3 years ago that everything that they do is flipping into the positive, and this was quite some time ago. Yeah. Every single event or strategy, it's flipping, and the reason why it's flipping is the energetic frequency of this planet doesn't sustain the negative frequency anymore, and that's because of the consciousness of the star seeds and their connections and their light beings and the Styrian High Council and the Guardian Races and the Nine. Because of those connections, we've opened these stargates and allowed that higher consciousness to reverberate throughout our reality. So we're creating this, positive flip. And now those who are not necessarily awake, if you like, they're catching that frequency. Even when they're struggling with this, they're still finding ways to survive. In so many ways, I'm seeing this. So, yeah, I think the rest of the year is going to be exciting. And I can understand why you're smiling, Patricia. And I think it's hard for people who don't understand the truth to see that and think, well, why are you smiling when the truth of what's going on is so awful and so dreadful? But we've known about it for so very long, and we've been through our grief, and we've been through our shock and our horror, and we've been through our processing and integration, and now we're smiling because those that have perpetrated this are coming to their justice. And so this means and signifies the beginning of the end. That's why we're happy, because we have been horrified and we have been absolutely shocked, and we want it to be over. Not for us, because we want the truth revealed to prove that we as conspiracy theorists were right. That's not why. We want it to be over so that these atrocities and these crimes against humanity, they stop for good, so we can go forward with a free planet for our descendants. And that's why we're smiling, because we're seeing that.
I just want to add an important point. And one of the reasons why the people that were in between, let's say, that were not really awake, they see now that the cabal and the activity and energies of that side are so utterly absurd, ridiculous. It's like evil to the nth degree. And they realize this, wait a minute, if I have to make a choice here, this is off the charts. Comical, it's almost comical. The dark forces work, the satanical marches, the whole, it's when I say comical, I don't want to get everybody in a kerfuffle here, because obviously there's nothing comical about suffering and pain. But my point is the extreme absurdity of what they keep putting out is almost comical, because it's just like, what can we come up with which is more evil than yesterday? Here's an idea. And it's almost like a movie. It's almost like a stereotypic archetypal raging evil seething that surely people don't resonate with. And so if it's time to choose sides, what's another reason why people are coming more into the light? Because they're seeing that for what it is.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, they're able to really shine light on the fact, I mean, we've all been shining light on the fact that like this positive shift was happening. The word ascension has been somewhat misunderstood, but it really is about human advancement, expansion of consciousness, coming together. And what's crazy is if Clinton won, if Hillary Clinton won, a lot of this stuff would still be under wraps. They wouldn't be able, we wouldn't have probably had as much of an easy time bringing these, crimes against humanity to light. I mean, we needed an administration that wasn't tied into the cabal. And this is what's so amazing to witness, is that as their dark agenda is rolling out, so much has already been exposed, so much has already come to light, that every time they do try and, do their next chess move or do their next false flag, it's like such a weakened script that you can just, it's like you can see the wizard behind the curtain so easily. And it's just like, this is the stuff that they would be rolling out, but they've got this other energy that, is making it impossible. And they have to do it so strategically that, like how they suicide people. Oh yeah. They have facades and cover stories for everything that has to do with their crimes. They're not going to do it in an open way. Like, we're just going to execute this person on the street because, they're threatening the cabal. Like, they're in such a weakened state that they still have to use the scripts and the storylines to hide behind. But with so much, brought to light, it's like those things have no foundation to stand upon. And so seeing the race wars and seeing their attempt to really, really drop our vibration and to conquer and divide and, going up against each other, and how many brave voices have come forward, representing their own, race and color, saying, there's a lot of awake ones of us out there, and we want to educate the youth that's being targeted, because this is absolute, bullshit. This white privilege, all this stuff. And it's coming from many diverse groups that are able to see through it. So the power of our voices is major. And that's just another thing that's falling away, is the capacity for those news stories, to really work. Because, as we don't allow those things to work and we, unify, we also are protecting and shielding ourselves against any kind of second wave or any potential, virus getting the best of us. And with the attention not being on white privilege or racism and these kind of conflicts, and remembering things like human trafficking and child trafficking and all these things that have been put to the wayside, this next wave of energy, I feel, is going to help us to reprioritize and get over the hump to where the second wave won't be possible. And the timing couldn't have been better.
I agree completely.
So what's really cool to see is that because people are like literally entrained and mind controlled by their television set, to see the main news stations bring light, back to these sort of things. Yeah. And for the attention to be on the crimes against humanity, particularly a couple days before this eclipse. I think the next 6 months is going to be, geared towards this. And it might get weird but I don't know if they have a card to pull out as far as, how to cover up the exposure of other pedophile elitists and people that have been a part of these human trafficking rings. What card do they have to play? Because was this part of like a plan that they, what I feel about their NWO script is that it doesn't consider things like the arrest of these people, that this is absolutely blindsiding them, and it's fracturing their capacity to deliver, the artificial timeline script that has been in the works for thousands and thousands of years. And that's why it's so huge. And we're feeling such an energetic lift, because we've been holding on to sort of this anxiety that has pushed us to urgency and action. I wouldn't say it's fear-based at all, and I'm not trying to speak for you guys, but just, this unsettled feeling about the subtleties that are just not in plain view. And finally, and I was agreeing too with what you guys were saying about the way people, it's like you have to be really blind, really numb to not, you know, all of a sudden say, I got to process this and give this some thought. Something is seriously, you know, whacked about this because of all the contradictions, you know, and how it's targeting this election. So that's just my sort of feedback in relation to what you guys said. Is there any kind of questions that you are coming in with to this roundtable that you'd like to bring attention to, or any themes or thoughts?
I would just like you to elaborate more on the question of Clinton, because I think that one of the reasons why they're slipping the way they are is they were completely sure their girl was going to be in, and that
Yes.
it feels almost like they got a gut punch when that happened, when she didn't. Nobody, Hillary, Trump, nobody believed it. And so I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because we do have the looming possibility they're going to throw Hillary in at the last minute when
Right. Yeah.
So
Right. Or the whole Michelle Hillary thing. Yeah. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. What are my thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I think that was the start of all this. Everything from their point of view was secure. It was in the bag, and they had a lot of confidence about what they were doing. Everything that they had done before was the same old thing, blaming other people for what they're doing, causing fear, flags of the false kind. It was all working. They were getting the results that they wanted. Everything was in the bag. And when Trump came along, it was never really seen as a threat. They didn't think, because they had viewed the timelines. This is the thing. They had technology to view the timelines, and the timelines that they viewed, Hillary won the election. That's what they saw. That's why they were sitting on their laurels. But what they missed is, when you see a timeline, that timeline might be the most probable timeline, but you have to work to actually bring that timeline into manifestation. If you sit on your laurels and think it's done and dusted, Hillary's won, that's it, and you just back off a bit and just play a game and see an opponent as just a clown and a bit of a laugh, and how then that timeline that's the lower probability from that perspective, because from other perspectives it was the higher probability, complex. And I think that was a shock. That was a shock when they did sit on their laurels and then he won. That then made them think, oh my goodness, we're not infallible. What we're seeing in this technology doesn't necessarily mean it's actually going to happen. And that started to change everything. And the presidency, the position of president, was actually prepared as a major tool, as in a tool that's, you know, weaponized against the people. To be in that position, everything was set up so that there were all these little sort of red tape boxes. I can't really, you know, discern what they are, but the metaphor is all these little neat boxes were tied up, and if they needed to do something to move into this new world order timeline and control the people, they could just open up these little boxes, which I presume are white papers and bills and laws. That was all tied up for the presidency. But what it did, should someone get into that position who isn't cabal and have that massive amount of power, that could potentially be the end of them. So, but they didn't think that would happen. And of course, that is what happened. Somebody who's not cabal got into that position and then had all their power tools, which they'd laid as traps to secure the New World Order timeline, which is what the 9 meant. They said, again, 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I'm not sure how long now, they said, they were talking about using this strategy as a chess game, a 5D chess game, and they said they have checkmated themselves. They said it is checkmate, but they have checkmated themselves. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. Now I do. They actually set up a trap that was part of their weaponized system through the legal system, through finance, through all of these things. And that same system is now being used against them because someone outside of the cabal is now in charge of the system. That's why they've done everything that they possibly can to get him out. But now, like Laura said, what can they do? What can they pull out of the bag? It's really all they can do now is delay the inevitable as long as possible and hope that they can actually sort of preserve as many of their people as they can. But they're prepared the ones that are in the sort of higher up positions are prepared to let some of their people go. So those people will have been double crossed, because they will have been told, don't worry, we'll protect you. You know, if you go down, we'll make sure you're okay. But they won't. They will let them go. They won't rally around them. They want to rally around them, but some of those people are expendable in order for the greater plan. But how many people are they going to be able to let go of and be expendable before the whole of humanity is woken up? That's what's happening. And what my question would be to both of you is, I really sensed a very high energy around the solstice and the solar eclipse. And then we've had this little sort of lull, a little sort of tiny calm before the storm kind of energy again. And then I felt things really ramping up again yesterday and today. So I think we're going back into this high spike of this lunar eclipse on the 4th of July. But you can really feel it ramping up today, I feel. And then I was feeling this before I saw that Ghislaine Maxwell had been arrested. So yeah, I think every truther right now, everyone who knows the truth, is on the edge of their seat, because they know that this is a massive thing. They know how huge this is, and they know that this could be the major domino that allows all the other dominoes to fall.
And that, and the fact that they know now that they're vulnerable, and they've never felt vulnerable. They've always been in omnipotence. So, you know, and one of the reasons why Trump always has played the clown at the beginning was to keep them ever even suspecting that he was who he is.
He did that too well, didn't he?
They know their vulnerability. They keep slipping back. You know, their key players are going down, and, you know, they've never known vulnerability like this. And it's just, I think that it's more than him being in the presidential seat, is that they are falling back because they were sure their girl was in, and the agenda was what it was. And it's just like falling back. Nothing's working. And, you know, when you ask the question, what is the next thing, Laura said, what is the next thing they could pull out? I think the next thing they're planning on is a super virulent version of the laboratory virus.
Yeah, it's some sort of false alien.
Yeah. I think before they pull the false alien card.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think virus more to the virus.
Yeah, and that's something we should be really talking about to help people plan for what that looks like and what to do.
Yeah, well, let's definitely bring some attention to that. One thing that I notice is with Saturn going in retrograde, it's going back into the sign of Capricorn, which means that this is what I love about retrogrades. It helps us to pick up things that we left behind. So if things are moving forward real fast and things are starting to manifest and it's connected to the artificial, because the cosmic intelligence and the alignments and everything that's going on a cosmic and earth level are geared towards ascension and a mass awakening, the retrogrades always help us to pick up the things that we left behind, right? So it's like Saturn has to do with structure. It has to do with the dark side of Saturn has to do with tyrannical control and trying to enslave the human race. The higher levels of Saturn have to do with self-mastery, getting over the trials and tribulations, and finding a way to be sovereign and a voice of authority for cosmic and natural law instead of matrix-induced programmed authority. And so with Saturn going in retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn, it gets, you know, close to Pluto again. And we've had that Pluto conjunction. So when these energies were moving forward and the pandemic started to take root, it was like all this other stuff just kind of fell to the wayside, like we were talking about. Now that it's back in the news during a retrograde time, we're picking up the importance of these forgotten stories, these things that haven't gotten attention because everybody's in survival and in a panic that we don't have time to talk about. You know, Pizzagate, pedophile rings. We're talking about racism. We're talking about, you know, we're all covered in mass, all the symbology of this, you know, dark ritual. And we're, you know, and the Saturn cube that we've all, you know, brought attention to. So Saturn's going back, it's revisiting Pluto. And now a lot more people are awake and all the wiser that when that starts to go direct again, especially with the eclipse energies, it's helping us to re-anchor ourselves on the right timeline, I feel. And this event happening before this next eclipse, I swear to God, it's like almost getting a hole in one with golf, because there was only 2 days that a big breakthrough like this could happen. And then with that third eclipse being on the other side of it, And if there was another false flag or another level of bullshit that they were going to put in the news coming in from the New World Order script, that would have been very tough for us to get out of. And I'm just like ecstatic. Like we were talking earlier, and I'm like, all this internalized depression's dissolving. And I'm just like, my soul is just smiling. This is major. And so we can really direct this all with being all the wiser, utilizing this retrograde energy to really go inward, to know what we need to harness, to focus on, to connect with, to align with, and to really, be, birthing ourselves, through the Pluto death, rebirth, alchemy cycle and into like the higher earth energies where the law of structure is in accordance with cosmic natural law and balance and unity and empowering the earth and the resources that are available and, technologies being disclosed that are in harmony with our DNA upgrades and this earth. I feel an incredible amount of hope. And when I did my tarot cards a little while ago, I was amazed I got 10 major arcanas as an outcome, like all upright. It was like a record of my life of 10 major arcanas. And yeah, so I just wanted to just mention that about the retrograde. Because sometimes people are like, oh, retrograde. It's like, no, retrogrades are great because it's sort of like if you're launching a project and then all of a sudden retrograde happens. If you forgot a major piece, you're able to go back and get it. And then, because it takes you inward, it forces you to, and like Venus retrograde, a lot of people end up, reconciling things with their exes or revisiting an old relationship that they never brought closure to. So that's just sort of an example in the category of like love. So you put that in the category of timelines and we're in great shape actually because of this.
Except for Mercury retrograde, I'd love your insights because every time everything blows out in my house, all the technical equipment, I've just lost a computer, the dishwasher, just like Mercury retro is killer for anything electromagnetic.
Yeah, Mercury is a tough one, but I think what it's allowing is people to, with this masking, everything about retrogrades will take us inwards. So the reason nothing works outwardly is because we're meant to sort of shut everything down, take some time, allow Mercury to go inside, to do inner processing, to look at ourselves, to turn our thoughts and the Mercury energy on what do we want to create and what's getting in the way if we, utilize the time for it. And then when it goes forward, it's like, especially with all these other retrogrades, I think we have 6 planets in retrograde, it gives us a chance to say, and be inspired by other people that are putting information out there. Cause we talk no matter what, whether it's retrograde or not, like people like us. But I think a lot of people, I notice a lot more channels are being launched, podcasts. I just put some amazing things on, from some people on my wall that I've never seen before, that are saying unbelievable things, that are gaining great influence. And I think, the next, when Mercury goes direct, people will be like ripping off their masks and saying, I'm going to step up too. And that's my hope for this retrograde period, because that's what it's going to take, the frequency of truth, the frequency of our authenticity. And the, instead of the glitch of an attack on us, which is a glitch to the organic ascension timeline, the glitch will be something they experience where when the second wave, when they're ready to unleash that next bioweapon, it just is not able to manifest because enough of our consciousness and unity and voices amplified is building and shielding us and protecting us even more. And I know on an individual level, a lot of people have that and aren't necessarily going to experience the timeline the same way. But anybody who's opened up their energy field to the media is literally allowing themselves to be on the virus timeline,
Good point.
But yeah, so the bifurcation kind of thing, we talked about before too. Okay, what are your thoughts, Magenta? And you guys were going to talk about, your mute is on. And we mentioned something really important to share. I wanted to pick back up on Patricia after Magenta shares her thoughts on that. You said we got to bring more attention to it. So we can come back around to that. But what are your thoughts, Magenta?
I muted because I keep putting my fan on because it's so hot here and I don't want it to be noisy. Yeah, everything you said, the retrograde is like sort of backtracking, going, retracing your steps. The 9 spoke to me about this. It's kind of like, the archer with the bow and arrow. If you were to shoot an arrow, you can't do it just from holding the bow. You have to pull the bow right back, then shoot the arrow. So when a planet's going retrograde or any retrograde energy, it's the pulling back of the bow. And then you let it go forward. So it gives momentum for when the planets change their direction. And I don't know anything about astrology, but this is about the way that we follow the energies of the planets. So this is what's happening to us when we backtrack. That is a major power step, and that's how the universe moves, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, and so we're always going forward. But those pullbacks are so important, because that's what gives us the momentum and the drive. So these retrogrades are you know, interesting, and they can be perceived as negative, but they give us the momentum to go forward. And I think that's what's occurring. And what I would say is, what's really significant here with Ghislaine Maxwell's arrest, if she is, you know, forced to actually confess everything she knows, and is in a situation where she does so, if she actually talks about the prince, the royal one, and the next step is taken to actually bring him over for questioning to America. He keeps saying that he is going to willingly offer himself for questioning, but the you know, those that have called him for questioning are saying they've asked him and he hasn't replied. So there is some, you know, there's a alliance versus cabal energy going on there between that. If he is brought in for questioning and the truth is revealed, that is the end of the false, fake, inverted monarchy, and is the beginning of the true sovereignty and the true royal expression, which is us, as we, the starseeds, the true, unconditionally loving, higher dimensional, 5th dimensional individuals. That will be a huge, huge shift if that, and there are many, many outcomes with this Ghislaine Maxwell arrest, but if we can go to that one where the royal, the prince, is called, and that is brought to light, if that situation is brought to light, that is the absolute end of that royal structure, of that, you know, monarch system, and with it the beginning of the true royal system, the true sovereign.
Not to mention the fact that the little black flight book has a lot of very high-placed politicians that are key players in the cabal, and those will be also the Clintons. So if she produces, I mean, if they've got the document, because I'm very curious of what they got on her to be able to arrest her. What are they holding? And hopefully that will be revealed soon. I don't know what happened to Jeffrey's little black book, but they must have, to be able to hold her, they must have gotten their hands on some very important information. And, you know, I'm excited about the royal question, which you have depicted so beautifully, but I'm also even more excited about these players in the American politic coming down.
I agree.
Because, especially at a time when, you know, it's really looking to me like they're going to try to plop in Hillary. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was a double ticket, Hillary and Michelle. Hillary would never go with Vice. That her ego wouldn't allow it. So, you know,
I thought Michelle, I mean, I'm almost, you know, certain, looking at the timelines, that it isn't going to be Joe. You know, it's not going to be, you know, that is a decoy. He is a decoy.
And Obama is doing all the campaigning anyway. They're setting the stage. But if they have the goods on Hillary in that, you know, at this moment, and she does have to testify in September anyway, that isn't looking like a probable reality. So once again, their timeline is all.
I think she's that reality blown up. I think it's just not
like a big kaboom. It's like, you know, the Wild Coyote. Remember those cartoons? Beep Beep, the Roadrunner, and Wild Coyote.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember them, but you know, the Roadrunner was always escaping. The Wild Coyote was always trying to capture him, and then eventually he'd fall off a cliff or blow up a bomb.
That's it.
And that's what it feels like to me. That's why I tend to humor, but
it's true though. It's like
right now, like you said, Laura, you know, I'm elated. I'm so thrilled that we've been given this gift. And you know, again, like Carrie Cassidy said, we need to see some wins here. And this is a gigantic win. And as you so eloquently explained, that right before the eclipse, Laura, and what that means, and going into it with this huge win. So I'm very eager to see what they've got, what's going to come out now, what they've got on her, and where is she? Because if ever there was a time to make sure that a prisoner was protected in some sort of capacity more than any jail, this is it. How they handle this is very important.
It totally is, and it really just shows how the collective consciousness we have reached that override frequency like we talked about last show, and that the willpower of the collective, you know, just like the immune system of the body is winning the war over disease of the mind, the emotions, the spirit, our spiritual nature, everything that has been compromised and attacked for thousands of years. And it's just, you know, going to grow because this being in mainstream news, you know, and the pedophile rings linking to pedogate and all these other stories that have been pushed to the wayside. Yeah, with Hillary testifying coming up and Obamagate not really getting any attention, I really feel like the false narrative BS news that is trying to sink our vibration into conflict and divide and conquer is just going to sort of almost, you know, when a person self-reflects, like, what was I thinking? Like, seriously, like I fell into this game, you know? And that's why every voice that declares that they don't play that game and they're not falling for this bullshit is so important.
Yeah. It's show and tell time.
It's unbelievable. So Magenta, you brought up a question. And what about you, Patricia? Anything before we met today that came to your mind that you wanted to be sure to, you know, talk about in our time together? That you can ask Magenta and me? And you can answer yourself, just sort of like, what would be, I mean, there's.
Well, I think that, I think a very important question now is that I keep harping on, so we may have already kind of touched on it, but it's all the more need for people to really, really grasp what it means to create, I don't like the word protection, but to create resonant fields around them so that these things can't come in. It's like, okay, so you get the cleansing, the mental, emotional cleansing. You start to understand what's going around. Now, how do you make sure, in the keeping with the concept of sovereignty, that you create these immense energy fields around you? Not because you're trying to protect yourself, but because you are intent upon holding a resonant frequency where none of the lower stuff can come in. And it's so important. And I think that we need to speak about it a lot more than we are, and just keep speaking about it and help people understand how to do that. And not assuming that everybody does. And also, you know, the truth is, even if you do, what is your spiritual hygiene when you go into any situation in the morning, when you go to bed, when you're astral journeying? What is your spiritual hygiene? Because these guys are opening up the astral. There's just the Swiss cheese already, so that all these lower entities are coming in.
A shielding.
Sorry?
You mean like a shield, like a shielding energetically?
Yeah, and I'm talking about, again, not that, you know, how do we protect ourselves, but how do we create this immensity of vibratory field around us where it doesn't come in, it just can't get in anymore. And I've said in former talks together, why is it that some people have this, aren't affected, the people that we call truthers, the people that we call spiritually awakening, and aren't affected by the 5G and the media, whatever? What is it? And I'm convinced that it's because we're holding an incredible resonant field that does not allow that to seep in vibrationally. So I think it's important to talk about that more, to help people be aware of it and to know what to do, and to keep working on that, expanding it more and more and more. And then in the nature of all we understand is oneness, knowing that seeps out to the other, and that's part of the awakening. When you talk about how is it that so many people are awakening now, it's being also in the presence of these people, being that lighthouse and radiating out that field.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think being in the 0 point place, because this will assist you with your emotional situation as we go through the rest of this year and into early next year, but certainly the rest of 2020. We need to cultivate stamina, because although there are these good things occurring, as in arrests of these perpetrators and people who've committed these crimes, many people aren't aware of what's going on. So they're going to go through all the shock that we went through when we learned all this, the shock, the horror, the disbelief. They've already had their reality crashed down with the whole COVID thing and the lockdown, and now they've got to go through it all again when the truth is discovered. Reality has already crashed before them. They've got this sort of triple and quadruple whammy that they have to cope with, whereas we've had many years to be able to process this. So those individuals need to be shielded by perhaps individuals who are able to not only hold that space and that light for themselves, but can assist others as well through this. And I think, family and friends, every light worker, every starseed, every truther, that's going to be their job. They're going to be holding the light for their community, their town, their family, their friends, as well as for the global situation. So what we need here, as you were saying, Patricia, is to cultivate the stamina needed to move through the rest of this year, because we are having our hopes, not with arrests necessarily. We are happy for, and smiling for a different reason. But I mean, in the false narrative, the hopes are raised, the hopes are dashed. They're raised, they're dashed. Oh, great, I can go out today. My favorite restaurant is now open. And then it's dashed because, I'm having my feet sprayed with disinfectant. So, it's an up and down, it's an up and down. And we need the stamina to cope so that we don't fall into that trap. And the 9 have said to me the way to do this is to cultivate temperance, which is this kind of 0 point field emotion. This temperance, this serenity, even though we're perceiving everything that's going on, we're not allowing our emotions to be caught up. If you remember how things went with, you might not have been so attuned to it being in America, but with Brexit, this is what they did to the British people. It's like, oh, Brexit's going to happen next week. And then, oh, we're actually going to delay it for another 3 weeks. So everyone's hopes are up, like, yay, we're going out, we're leaving the EU on Thursday. And then, have you heard? It's another 3 weeks, and everyone's annoyed and they just fall for the trap. That they allow their emotions to just be led by this false story. And when we remove ourselves from that, that's when we do build this, start to cultivate the shield that you're talking about, this field. And everything we do as we move into a spiritual path, and you don't have to have been on a spiritual path for 20 years to do this. You can cultivate this in a matter of weeks on a spiritual path. You can cultivate this with one meditation and one book. So I think people are doing this, and they are holding that field, and they are holding that resonance and being in that 0 point, and working out when something comes into your reality, whether it's something you see on the TV or something you've read or a person you meet, where is this energy in my field? Is this positive? Is this negative? Is it a bit of both? How do I work with this? And this is the journey we're all on. This is the whole ascension journey and the raising of the shadow. This is all part of what's occurring. And, it's so intense right now. That's the crux of what's going on a spiritual level.
And there's also this, I think people are getting a little bit tired of being in one-dimensional emotional response, meaning this is bad today, this is good today. This is, you can't use that word anymore, you have to use it with this word. And it's just like, today I hate this, and tomorrow I love this, and it's just this, mechanism of teaching people, of attempting to teach people to be in one-dimensional thought, one-dimensional emotion all the time, good, bad, dark, light. And people are getting tired of being tethered that way. And they're starting to recognize the absurdity of those control mechanisms. And it's helping them come into the center. There's nothing more important than being in objectivity, observance, where you can, instead of, what do you mean if you're not wearing a mask? I still can't believe that somebody told me that because I refused to wear a mask, I want them to die. That was the ultimate that I've heard in many a year. But coming to that place that, and we too, we get very excited. We're excited about our dialogue, and but still there's a sense of calm observation, watching it unfold, being in center enough not to be swayed, especially by the one-dimensional game that's being perpetrated on the unwitting, if you will.
Yeah, and that's the thing with
people are getting exhausted with it. Sorry, let's just round that out, Laura. They're getting exhausted with being manipulated that way. They're starting to see, what do you mean I can't say master bedroom? And it's just like, the more absurd it gets, the more people are waking up, which is just the divine cosmic joke of the people that are trying to manipulate in this way, which is why I'm smiling.
Oh, totally. So beautifully said. Everything you both share is just, yes. Oh my gosh. I just love the resonance. But yeah, I mean, unconscious energy is waking up. So unconscious energy is our multidimensional energy. It's our spiritual energy, and it's something that we all have. And that's why I agree. I mean, it can be, something so quick, but the heartbreak, the mourning, the having to move through the shock and the layer of like trauma of like this level of betrayal and all that people have invested their lives into, that basically is connected to the most criminal things that they absolutely, wouldn't be in agreement to if they were able to process that information when it was first made available, or had the ability to maybe see through it at a younger age. But I mean, these are all well-intentioned people that put their trust into something that believed that they were born into a system that cared about them. So that level of heartbreak is huge, and the mourning, the tears, the crying, the releasing, that's going to help to release the old paradigm. It's like breaking up with the most abusive partner that you thought actually cared about you, and realizing they've been cheating on you, they've been betraying you. And once people get through that difficult part, their immune systems will increase. They will be able to like neutralize a lot of the dark things that are happening that they'll still try and, put out there, because they're now moving up in dimensional awareness. They're not in the personality matrix. They're not just regurgitating what they're being fed or just believing everything that they're told. Even though there's multiple programming to make sure we're conquered and divided, whatever side they've chosen, whatever thing they've gravitated to that gives them a sense of identity and purpose and belonging, is now, going to go through that. Wow, I got to fall back on myself. And this is where we are the arms that will catch, anyone who is just afraid of taking that step. And once we get to the next level, it's just like, it's so beautiful and more unbelievable than we can imagine. So there's so much to look forward to. And that's why it's so important people remember what's on the other side of all this. The tragedy and betrayal. I mean, it's just like once that patterning is broken and there's no more energetic cords with narcissists or controllers or deceivers or liars or betrayers, and we've gained enough wisdom, then you're ready for true love. Then you're ready for a true love life experience. And that's the organic timeline, is that, the connection with earth and cosmos and spirit and your own soul, and seeing that beauty in others and connecting on that, is the most powerful, incredible thing. And sometimes people just can't believe that something that good to be true will happen. But so many people have stories of, being with the abuser and then being with the love of their life. And their life has, gotten better and better and better because they allowed themselves to go through that really, really painful shadow work. And that's what I love about what our intention is coming together. Because, we have that intention for everybody who's watching, that you're not alone. And we know, and understand the level of pain of and that's why I don't like the sheeple or the, I mean, I know people out there get frustrated. We all get frustrated with the lack of awakening, but it to me, that's almost a racist term. And I can't say the word racist anymore, or else, so forget I even said that word. But we have to be careful of, just where we forget about the need to hold these people that we might deem sheeple, because they need us more than ever right now.
The trouble is, it's the newly awakened truthers that are using those terms because they've not been awake long enough. And so they're going through the frustration. It's like, it's been 3 whole months. Why are you still asleep? And
right, it's totally understandable. Totally.
It's totally understandable for us, because obviously they've woken up at the beginning of this pandemic. So it's so obvious, or they may have been awake before that, but then, they've ramped up their awakening because of this. It's so obvious to them. So it's like, why can't you see? How can you still be asleep? They don't understand. we've been awake for so many years that we've dealt with that. We've moved through the shadow, moved through the frustration, so we can love the sleepers and the newly awakened frustrated truthers. So there's so many different sort of dynamics as to where we all are. And I don't like sheeple either, but I in a way, sheeple's a double-edged sword. It's really derogatory and offensive, and it's teasing and nasty, but it can wake people up. I actually saw a conversation, an argument, like, why are you calling me a sheep? And this newly awakened truther, because you can't see.
Not that bad of a word. Yeah.
And then they went out looking, what does it mean when someone calls me a sheep or a sheeple? And then they discovered information. I mean, it can wake people up. So yes, it's not a nice word, and but I do understand why the frustrated, newly awakened truthers use it, because they just want to. I mean, I've seen newly awakened truthers write things like, "I give up. You're just never going to wake up, and I just want off this planet." I actually know a newly awakened truther, and I said to him the other day, I had this dream where there was this darkness and I was being chased by these cabal operatives, and everyone was screaming. But we got out in the end. We actually escaped them, and we managed to get to this beautiful meadow. And he said to me, this really does not give me a lot of hope when someone as spiritually aware as you has just predicted the end of the world in your dream. This is a newly awakened truther who's aware of the truth. And I said, yeah, it's a metaphor. Oh, okay. I said, what it means is, so it's like they are awake to the truth and they know what's going on, but they may not necessarily be seeing the metaphors, the nuances, the deeper sort of codes within the whole plan, the whole matrix. They're just seeing literally. So seeing a fourth dimensional picture with third dimensional eyes, and interpreting fourth and fifth dimensional concepts in a third dimensional way. So
they haven't resolved their own immortality question. So, you can have all the awareness of reality around you outside, but if you aren't working on the inner question of understanding that you're an immortal being, then you're always going to have that undercurrent of fear about your own mortality. So there has to be a balance between understanding the picture and then the much deeper existential question of understanding what it means to be a soul in transit through lifetimes. And
I think that's what's going on. That's why it is so exciting, because people are waking to that. I think that's what these energy spikes are. July the 4th, July the 7th, solstices and equinoxes and eclipses, those spikes are actually causing this. And like I said before, I'm seeing people that I never thought would awaken to any kind of spirituality or dream interpretation or symbolic understanding. They are waking up, but it doesn't sort of happen overnight. And I know some people that are awake in one area but haven't necessarily translated it to another. And I truly feel that this is happening to everybody. The ones that don't look like they're awakening are deliberately sort of shutting it off. So there are some people who are pretending everything's okay, it's this little naughty germ and it'll soon be gone and everything will be normal. But they know deep down inside that that's not right, something isn't right, but they're trying to sort of come to some kind of agreement with their own framework, their own paradigm, so that they can stay sane. And that's happening as well. But when you look at the actual all the individuals on this planet, there's no one that's really truly third dimensional anymore. Everyone has been pushed into this fourth dimensional wave in varying degrees.
Right. How do you deal also with just real quick, the astral parasites of an imbalanced heart, either not loving the self enough or overly putting somebody else in the position of save me, be the person that does it for me. And that imbalanced heart chakra, is part of like moving through the fourth density till we reach that place of, throat chakra empowerment, where we can begin to use our words to heal ourselves and each other and be empowered by the frequencies coming in from the 0 point unified field that does hold the purification energies. And so, yeah, it's like, I've used the word sheeple before, and I totally understand that. It's just sort of like acknowledging that we need to love those that keep us stuck, because some though will absolutely learn a lot about that word, and that's why it's not that bad of a word. But we're definitely crossing over a big, barrier. I feel where the attention is not so much on using these trigger words to keep us in a low vibration. Like this whole racism, white privilege, race wars thing was absolutely in the hopes, I think, of that overtaking the timeline beyond this eclipse, and we got that news story with and so I'm so grateful again. But yeah, so sheeple are leading themselves to slaughter, and it's almost like a red alert. It's just like, come on, like a lot of depends on the intention behind the words. That's the thing with words. Yeah. We need to be more accountable for our triggers and not take everything so personally and be so offended, and really get the vibration and the intention behind a person's words. And also to recognize the shadow work that needs to come from it, instead of, because really you're letting somebody enslave you if you're letting them offend you with everything they say. It's like, get over it. Sorry, yes. What were you going to say though, Patricia?
Well, I have to just add to what you just said, which is profound, and that is that the controlling of language, the personal, the PC mentality is always a one-dimensional interpretation of a word. Master meant masters of slaves 400 years ago or whatever. And so for that reason, we can't use the word master bedroom. And it's just like, let's get back to understanding that words have meaning and they convey intention. And let me be free to use the words that express my intention, not some arbitrary system that is run by the cabal that wants to imprison us with language, for starters. So we've got the word control police, and then we've got the mask, and it's like, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we're being controlled. The words are being controlled, the physical pronunciation of language is being controlled, and we need to remember, like you said, which is, for me, everything is intention. So if I say I've got a beautiful master bedroom, it holds no other frequency than the meaning of what that is intended.
What you brought to it, yeah. And same with like symbols and anything. It's like, yeah, exactly.
It's happening in the spiritual community as well. Somebody wrote to me only last week, saying, Magenta, will you help me to change the word triggered to catalyst? Because triggered brings up connotations of, shooting and killing and guns and everything, whereas really it's catalyst. And I replied and said, well, the two words have slightly different energies anyway. Trigger, we use it in the spiritual community because it means it's a fast moving energy that creates a reaction. A catalyst can be much slower. So trigger is more appropriate for some energies. And the 9, I interpret, when I speak to the 9, I interpret some of their words, and one of those words will be triggered. And I said to her also, we want to be careful that we don't police one another in the spiritual community, because that is what the cabal are doing. So yes, but I never thought of triggered ever. I never ever had the thought of shooting or guns or anything in my head ever. Now, since she brought my attention to it, I actually do. Now when someone says triggered, I actually think of it, because it's opened my awareness to the fact that some people see that, which is not good, and I absolutely agree, but we wouldn't change the word. What we would do is open our awareness to the use of it, and what Laura said, it's about intention, and you said it's about using a word to explain your intention. So we don't want to police people in the spiritual community or anywhere. But there are some words that everyone has the same opinion of. So there are some very dark, horrible, offensive words. So obviously we're going to take great care not to use those. But we can actually jump, and that's what the cabal have done, and pretend to be offended with every single word we use. And so everything like black hats and white hats. I've been told that that's a sort of a white supremacy kind of racist language. It's, are we going to go into the yin yang symbol and say that shouldn't be black and white? It's like, we have to be aware of the intention behind the use of that word. There are no spiritual people that have decided to use the word black hat and white hat in order to be racist, or to use dark and light in racist terms. They are not that. They are talking about vibration, and it's nothing to do with someone's skin color or hair color or the color of their clothes or their eyes. You know, all of that is completely separate. But
Right.
obviously some people get caught up.
When you insert that paradigm into a conversation, it cuts the energy immediately. So, and then it's like, you know, for example, when I lead a meditation, and one of my expressions is trigger the love. Trigger the love. Right? And, you know, it has beauty, it has power, it has, like you said, a lot of force. And if I have to, when we're in the position where we're conscious of that, how a word, a one-dimensional interpretation of a word is affecting other people because somebody has told us it's a bad word, then, you know, we just keep going. It's like having a video and having 87 ads in the video, where you lose total perspective of what the point is, because it's just break until there's no contiguous thought. There's no continuity whatsoever. And that is their agenda. Cut everybody from communicating.
I remember that song by the 80s group ABC, and the line of the song was, "Shoot that poisoned arrow through my heart." Now that would have all these negative connotations, but the meaning of it was, I want you to fall in love with me. Yeah, I want you to make me fall in love with you. You are making me fall in love with you. That's what it meant, and we all knew that. So back then in the 80s, no one thought twice of lyrics like that. Exactly. Everything is being picked up now, and I think, you know, this is a cabal agenda in order to use it for control. So we in the spiritual community need to make sure that we aren't doing that, but we still have to follow our own intuition. So if we don't feel that the word is right for us, then we shouldn't use it. But you can't tell another spiritual person or a channel, can you not use that word, please? Use this instead. It doesn't work like that. It's like me your books. Can you imagine your books, Patricia? And I opened all your books and I said to you, can you not use these words, please? Can you change them? And when you're channeling, it comes through so fast. Yeah. And the words you use are the most appropriate, aren't they, for that energetic message at that time? Sorry, carry on. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
You know, I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, I just, and let's throw in a little humor here, because we've become so severe, so ready. Everybody's ready for the word that's going to offend. We're losing our humor. Well, comedians are talking about it all the time. They can't even do a stand-up skit because they're always worried about who they're offending. And this is a very deliberate mindset that's being perpetrated on the human race. So what people, if they ask me, question what I'm saying, I just say never defensive. I just say, look, that word has the meaning to me. My intention is this. Feel my intention and stop beating me up for the choice of words, or you're going to lose me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to waste time trying to break through if you're determined to be offended.
Well, this all goes back to psychological operations and how they used to have test subjects to see what happens if we, you know, conduct this study and we put out this sort of bit of propaganda to get people believing in something and watch them turn on each other. I did something with like eye color, and just a lot of the like hidden psychological operations have had many test subjects just to see how you can literally drop the energy of a group of people just by introducing a concept. Either a superiority concept or an inferiority complex. And so they're very masterminding in how to like do these psychological operations, particularly targeting the growth periods that humanity are meant to go through. We're in the nodal axis of Gemini Sagittarius, which has to do with the throat chakra. So we're supposed to be upgrading and probably being less offended. And so this is a way to drop us and keep us, you know, in these lower levels, and also create enough guilt that if they put like and maybe it won't be Michelle Obama, but it might be, you know, a black leader that is not right for us, just like they did with Hillary for the feminist vote, that would say, oh, a woman's coming into power, a woman president. They don't even want to get to know who this woman really is. They just want a woman president. And then so they're looking at things on a surface level. So I'm just seeing that this is sort of a setup to put everybody sort of in this, place of, wow, we're all guilty. We all offend each other. We have to restructure our language. It's the same kind of policing that they want to do with the contact tracing. Let's turn civilians into, those that are going to start to enforce the cabal law and be all in their ego and think they're really helping out and being of service. So I think this is not going to end up working, but we're seeing all these different attempts, and it has to start with making us second guess ourselves, causing insecurity, guilt, all these lower level emotions that lower our frequency, like on the power versus force scale of, the higher numbers are love and enlightenment, the lower numbers are shame, guilt, apathy, all these things. And so that, lower vibration also helps us to be assimilated into AI. And we should be getting less offended, because when you do inner work and you find self-love, everything bounces off of you. So this is a really, really, poor sign that if people are letting everything hurt them and offend them, that they're not doing what they need to do right now to cross the barrier. I mean, eventually we'll heal language. It's already got a lot of subliminals, and it's slanted towards, something that needs changing. Yeah, so I'm just definitely, it's a big target. It's a psychological operation. When, we should be, moving into better word choices anyway, because we're upgrading. It's almost belittling us and making us like children and authorities over each other, and really lighting up our inner child wounds of like abusive authority, being belittled and undermined, and that vibration is very, very difficult. If we're empowered, if we're strong and we're whole, we can have conversations that are super high vibe, where we see we see beyond the words, we see the transmission, or we feel the energetic, heart energy. And it's just really cutting us off from, that capacity. And the thing is, when we are high vibe and we're not belittling each other and we actually empower each other, we help each other create a better connect and channel to our higher self, because we're actually empowering that within each other instead of scolding one another and making each other feel like shit. Because I'll block you immediately if you do that to me, because I don't have time for it. I mean, I might give you a little bit of a chance, but I'm not going to stick around for this bullshit.
That's the word, Laura, scolding. That is the best word to describe it. It's childhood all the time. That describes it perfectly. I'm being scolded for using the wrong word. Absolutely. It's got to stop.
Oh, and to me, it's so out of balance, and it's got sort of an arrogance and victim mentality. It's like this person's empowering the fact that they're victims and that they actually literally have no backbone. They literally cannot handle anything. And their poor, fragile nature, we have to be so careful of. And I can understand for derogatory terms, for severe insults, but you're making it hard to even have a regular conversation. And yes, words need to be upgraded and be more higher vibe. And I love the way you put it, both of you, and what you just said, Magenta, making a request. I mean, especially if one's in a relationship, honey, every time you say that word, it just reminds me of my school teacher, or something in my past. And I'm really sorry. It has nothing to do with you. It's more my shit. Right. So now I'm all cussing now, 'cause I'm getting all fired up, but it's kind of honey, I have an issue with that word because of this, instead of something's wrong with you for using it. We have to be more accountable to our wounds and our traumas and where we take offense, and stop exerting this arrogant victimhood, because that's what it actually feels like. Am I totally going off the rails here?
No, you're right on target, sister. Right on target.
The thing is, a lot of people don't know they're doing it. When they're putting their stuff on you, they don't realize, because they're stuck in their own reality, and they think that that's everyone's reality, and they don't realize that they're actually totally crashing your boundaries down and putting that onto you. So I think, we have to take responsibility to tell people gently, like I did with this person. I mean, she wasn't crashing my boundaries down, but she was putting her interpretation of that word, and she feels that it's her job spiritually to remove this word from the spiritual vocabulary. I don't see how that's going to happen, because She can move it from her spiritual vocabulary, or even maybe a few people, but we've got a long established spiritual vocabulary, and that is one of the words that is used. Because and I think a lot of this comes from channeling, whether you know you're channeling or you don't realize you're channeling. When you're picking up an energy and you're trying to explain an energy, you should that that fits that energy. And when you're channeling, obviously, as I said, Patricia, you'll know that when you write the books, you want to get the word exactly right. In fact, there are some times when there is no word to fit the energetic that you'll be picking up, and then it will come through as there is no word in your vocabulary to explain this vibration. However, the nearest one is this, this, or this. I mean, that's what they will say. So someone who's a channel will be more aware of this sort of word situation and this terminology. And the nine talk about flame letters and this, you know, cosmic subconscious language that will be the language and is becoming the language of the fifth dimension and beyond. So in New Earth, in the fifth dimension, the language is telepathy, it is vibration, and it is looking into one another's eyes, feeling one another's energy, trusting one another enough to open up our energy fields and feel one another's energy, merge with one another's energy, touch one another, which again, the Kabbalah are aware of the Great Awakening and what it entails, and that it includes telepathy, and that's what they want to shut down, because that takes that planet into an ascension timeline, and that's a timeline that they are trying to prevent for as long as they can and hold back, because once we're in an ascension fifth dimensional reality, they cannot sustain here. The higher aspects of that hierarchy cannot sustain here, and the non-physical entities that feed off humanity, they can't sustain here either. So basically they're losing a resource, they're losing a food source. That's how it's seen from their perspective. They want to hold on to this resource, and that's what they're trying to do. And it's very difficult for somebody who doesn't see those higher levels and higher realities to even understand why this is occurring. The amount of people you will see that will say things in such an incredulous way, like, but this doesn't actually help health. This is proven that this, and this isn't going to help our health. It's going to make our health worse. And they're so incredulous that the governments are actually putting in place an agenda that's going to actually not help our health. But we who see, we know why, because their agenda isn't health. Their agenda isn't life, it's an anti-life agenda. They don't want us to get well. You know, that they're wanting to reduce population, change the way that we think, and move
self-pharmaceuticals
and AI assimilation, you know. So their agendas, and unless you understand their agenda, you will never, ever get why things are happening. And then on top of that, you've got another agenda going on, and it's trying to work out what is what and who is who. You know, is this genuine? Is it falsehoods? Is it lies? Is it coming from the alliance and the, you know, white hats, if you will, or is it coming from a cabal agenda? This is why it's so important to have that field you were talking about, Patricia, because that field isn't just about shielding your energy. It is actually a radio dial. It is a signal. It allows you to pick up signals as well as create them, as well as shield yourself. That's your energy body, and knowing it's crucial.
In a certain frequency that you want to be in, so that this lower stuff can't infiltrate your body electric, and so that you draw to you people who are of like mind and like energy, so that, you know, this is how we expand it. This is how we interact with intention rather than reaction.
Yes.
Intention.
Laura, I have a question for you, changing the subject, not entirely, but somewhat. I wanted to ask you, astrologically, are we in the age of Aquarius now? What is the age of Aquarius? I feel we're in that Aquarian energy. I had someone write to me saying that June 30th was a gateway into the Aquarian energy. It was an Aquarian stargate. I didn't pick that up from the 9, but I happily shared this lady's meditation because it was beautiful. So what's Aquarius? Are we in it now? Is she? Yeah. Did you hear my?
Oh yes, I absolutely heard. I mean, there's a lot of differing opinions. my partner in the background just yelled out December 31st of this year.
Yes.
December 21st. Okay.
21st, yeah, definitely.
To me, what really gauges it, I mean, we've been on the cusp for a long time, and that's why, you know, when we heard the song Age of Aquarius, we're on the dawning. You know, to me, it has a lot to do with the outer planets. The outer planets are the most initiatory planets, and they determine new generational waves of energy and new eras. And so we've been dealing with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, Neptune in the sign of Pisces, Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign. So the Aquarian Uranus energy has already entered the earth plane on a physical level. So to me, that when that moved into Taurus, which wasn't that long ago, you know, to me, you know, the more the Aquarian Uranus energy, the more to me we're in that age, right? When it comes to outer planets. So Pluto being in Capricorn is going to eventually move into the sign of Aquarius. Then we're full on in. But, you know, I think we just need to figure that we're already there. It's sort of like, here we are in the earth plane. Not all of us are 3D consciousness. Some of us are vibrating on a consciousness level, you know, way beyond that. But that's something that the earth is moving into, right? So I think a lot of humans are carrying the Aquarian age energy, and the properties of Aquarius and Uranus are sovereignty, unity consciousness, sovereignty being a prerequisite to unity consciousness, connection to 0-point unified field, the higher mind. It's a very strong electrical energy. It'll now saying the word Trump is, it'll override, so I use override, the energies of Saturn. It's the wrecking ball. It'll break down the false structures. It'll break down and destroy anything that's not vibrating with the higher frequency of truth. So it's also the planet of shock and upheaval. So in our lives, if we're holding on to an attachment, but our higher self is like, no, it's time to let go of that attachment, and we're not ready, a lot of times people go into shock. They might start to have panic attacks. They might feel like they're in a crisis. Now that's different than going through a traumatic event. The dark side of Uranus rules things like dark technology and also traumatic events. And that would be more the shadow side. So in the age of Aquarius, they're trying to pull us into or push us into transhumanism and AI. And that would be the dark side of Uranus we don't want to see, just like we've been dealing with the dark Saturn. So as a humanity, the more authentic, the more connected to truth and the higher levels of self and the higher qualities of Uranus, we're going to help usher the world into a much more advanced, you know, civilization. But they're hoping to, because they're always utilizing the dark side in our own shadow self. And they're trying to replace our shadow work with false industries that poison us and give us false solutions like pharmaceuticals and things like chemotherapy. And I'm not saying like it doesn't have its place, but as a general protocol to deal with, you know, illness or mental health problems, absolutely not. So that's kind of too long of an answer, but that's kind of how I see it. I can't think of a specific date. I feel like we've just been hanging on the cusp for quite a while, and we're about to go over the hump and absolutely enter it by the time next year hits. I don't really have an exact date. My husband does. So I'm like, okay.
No, I agree. And I would say that the solstice in December is very pivotal for this shift. That we're in. So it's spreading out, and we're in the cusp of it. We're in the energy of it. And I also feel that Aquarius, Ascension, Arcturian, and Atlantis, all 4 words beginning with A, hold incredibly similar energies to them. So Ascension, Aquarius,
and the Aquafarians, exactly, and the Aquafarians that have been able to return, that are Andromedan, that are able to incarnate now.
Yeah, all beginning with A, you know, the first letter of the alphabet, you know, the beginning of a new alphabet. This is what we're going into. So yeah, I was just interested because I think you're an amazing sort of vocal mouthpiece for planetary alignments and energies. You know, I see you as a planetary channel actually communicating with the living frequencies of the planets themselves, because when you start talking about astrology, your whole energy changes. Do you notice that, Patricia?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very profound way to describe it, that she is actually speaking for the planets.
I would say so, yes.
The wisdom is just beyond anything that I can imagine you learn.
Yeah, I don't know how, it's kind of, because I do it so much that it's just become such a part of my languaging. That's why I think I just have a comfort level, because like, oh, it's a language I can speak. I don't lean on it too heavily, like my whole world doesn't revolve around it, or I don't check it all the time, but it just so happens I do sessions every day. So it just kind of forces me into it. Then I'm like, whoa, okay, you know, and then it just became a tool for me understanding a lot about our galactic history, the shadow side of planets, the Saturn moon matrix, and so much more to it than, you know, just giving a reading, that I've integrated into my presentations, which is just, you know, kind of evolved over time. It didn't really start off fully like that, but thank you for the feedback, you guys. I don't have, you know, certain exact things, but it definitely, that's kind of, how I'm feeling about, you know, this age. And absolutely the solstice is going to be hugely important. And it's just going to be so interesting to see how things unroll. It's like every morning, you know, when you wake up, it's like, what are we in for today? So
yeah.
Well, today we certainly got some interesting news. That's all I have to say about that.
So do you guys have any final thoughts or anything you want to share before we close?
I'm just really thrilled to have been once again with you two. It's just such an incredible union. I feel an immense connection. It's stronger than anything I think I've felt in a long time.
Aww.
So thank you once again for inviting me to be with you and to share and drink of your wisdom and knowledge and energy.
Yeah, I think it's
so wonderful to drink of yours. Go ahead, Magenta.
I was just saying the same thing. The energy is this trinity, the three of us. It's very powerful, and I feel that people can feel it when they listen to us talk. It's not really always about what we're saying. It's about connecting, and for people to see and actually come into that connection and be part of it, because that connection, as I've said so many times before, that connection, that frequency keys you into your own telepathy. So after listening to us talk, you go away, you go into meditation or wander around the garden or whatever, and you start to pick things up yourself. And this is what is happening. We're all waking up, and we're all waking up to the next level. It's not like we're staying where we are. Each one of us is on a journey to the next level, the next phase, the next vibration. It's an ever moving energetic. And, you know, for those who've already been in this energy this whole year, right from the beginning of the whole, you know, pandemic thing, it's been challenging, but it has been incredibly interesting. And as Laura said, every day you wake up, what's the energy like today? You know, what's happening today? Key into the energy. Where are we? Are we in stillness? Is there a threat? I mean, there's been so many times when I've seen in mainstream television, they're talking about this terrible threat, this new spike, but I can't feel the threat all the time. It isn't there. Then it's not in nature. It's not in the skies. It's not in the trees. And then sometimes you'll feel it come in, but that's not nature. That's not life. This is a planned attacking energy that's coming in, and you can kind of use it to be aware of something that's coming next. And then the next thing is you get on, you know, your chosen news source and find out what's happening. And I think these next few days, it's been the beginning of July, the early days of June, the early days of May, the beginning of each month has been a real powerhouse energy into the month. So I'm feeling the next few days for the next week ramping up with energy from now, you know. And obviously 4th of July, you've got this fantastic independence celebration, which I know really nothing about other than the 9 said this year it will be World Independence Day. We will all be feeling it.
Well, let's hope that everybody takes their masks off and really gets behind the meaning of independence on this day. Let's hope for a revelation here, where people, instead of getting drunk and having boot parties on the beach, really contemplate the meaning of independence and rip off those masks, and let's get on with living here.
Oh, beautiful, both of you. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful. I look forward to next time, and I think we're just going to be doing these. Hopefully we'll just continue to do this, and I'll give all their info in the description. And just thank you everybody for joining, and just really grateful to be on this journey with you both and all of you out there. And thanks again.
Thank you.